really differentiates how these teams try to play the game, whereas this Rogue side really likes to look for late game team fights with their control mage.
This is so interesting. So coming into 9-12, I was curious how it was going to shift. If Aatrox was going to move off of the ban bench, sorry there, and into first pick status. That's going to get clipped out.
The ban bench for Aatrox.
The ban bench and into first pick. But I was talking to some coaches and they felt that it was situational due to the changes that he saw on 9-12.
But Yuumi has been locked in here for Splyce. You could hear some cheers from the crowd. Don't always see her getting through the pick ban, but locked in for the bottom lane of Splyce. Alongside that, they'll get Xerxe, a jungler with some CC and with some early game presence, which is what we wanted to see. It's the Jarvan.
It's going to be hard to be inconsistent here for Norskeren on a pick like the Yuumi, you know? Just go attached to your ally. You're never going to go down.
But the thing is that the Nautilus is still open, and Nautilus is kind of the go-to answer or pick into the likes of Yuumi alongside Sivir. It just denies that they get to pick up the Sivir for Kobbe himself because she can deny a lot of what Nautilus wants to do with the spell shield. So I really like the second rotation from Rogue. It feels like they've got the perfect answer to Splyce's bot lane. And Splyce's bot lane, it's definitely playing from a back foot here.
Definitely, definitely. And I think Rogue also have very strong team fight tools already with the initiation of a Sivir plus Nautilus. The survivability too of an Aatrox as well. It sets up very well for this team. And I think that one thing you can try to do against Yuumi lanes is set up for dives. Nautilus is one of the best champions in the game for doing that because of his multiple CCs and innate tankiness when going for those tower dives.
I think kind of the silver lining for Splyce so far in the first three champions of both these compositions is A, Xerxe got the hard engage, so that's exactly what we wanted, unless it does go to Chachi up there into the top side. And B, Jarvan is actually really good against Sivir. He's one of those junglers where he just lands on top of her, and because she doesn't have inbuilt dashes like the likes of Ezreal, she just kind of have to sit with him or burn the flash.
Spell Shield does not work against Cataclysm that effectively.
It can block some damage.
It can block some damage. Doesn't block you getting locked in the Doom room. Now Elise being banned away by Splyce, taking away an early game jungler from Inspired. Shen removed from Chachi up towards that top side. So Rogue trying to stop Splyce from being able to play all over the map.
Yeah, and it's also kind of taking a page from what Bwipo showed. You know, he showed that if you take the Shen into the Aatrox, that it can be a favorable matchup right there. So trying to give Prophet or even Larssen, depending on where Aatrox lands, some more favorable matchups there.
I also like seeing Splyce now removing a lot of these early game junglers from Expired. I expect to see him, Inspired rather, I expect to see him go for the Rek'Sai. That's been a champion he's really enjoyed in the past and very good at trying to find roundabout ganks onto someone like an Ezreal.
But they could just grab the Rek'Sai for themselves right here because you have so many jungle bans leverage. I was curious which one it was going to be unless it is a Jarvan jungle in fact.
Could always flex that Jarvan, as you say, up towards the top side. Azir will be the lock for Splyce. Humanoid playing something relatively, you know, utility mage focused in the mid lane. Has a lot of damage, but of course, not known for early aggressive plays.
It's also a great takeaway from Larssen. One of his key picks is something like that Azir. He is nasty on it, and it works really well in tandem with Ezreal. Ezreal and Azir can spike at kind of similar points on two items, and then Azir can fully outscale. So Ezreal also adds as a good bridge for Azir's late game power spike.
So sometimes those words can be a little bit tricky
I've
for us.
been tilted since first pick.
Understandable. Okay, so Skarner is the next lock-in here for Rogue. Both teams, we talked about how they want to be able to team fight in comps. I'm seeing that a little bit from both these sides, Ender.
And I really want to see them pick the Corki. Yes, I love this pick up against the Azir. You really start to outscale on this champion 2-3 items. You have that consistent DPS, and I feel like it fits right into Larssen's wheelhouse.
We'll see what Splyce decide to lock in last. A lot of different options for them. Not going to be the volley bear. OP in teamfight tactics, but not so strong on Summoner's
Make that a level 3
now. Gnar as well in the top lane will be locked in here for Vizicsacsi, one of his signature picks. So now that we see both the compositions rounded out, I want to talk about how these teams will play. When we came into the game, we said team fight tends to be the way of both these squads. Is that what we see from the draft?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a whole lot of that. You just look at the mid laner and AD carry, right? On the side of Rogue, you have Corki plus Sivir. So much late game DPS on 3 items. Almost nothing can go head to head against that. Whereas on the other hand, you have Splyce, right? With this Azir in the mid lane, you're going to be pumping out the consistent DPS. The thing is, I agree with you, Frost. They spike earlier on that 2 items. I think that's the window they have to seize, which Splyce has historically struggled with.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that Splyce have a really clean, very strong mid-game here. for their early game, all eyes are on Kobbe and Norskeren. How are they going to pilot this Ezreal and Yuumi? We've seen very hit-miss looks at this 2v2. I think the poke is astronomical if it's played correctly, but so far, every chance we get to look at Yuumi in the LEC, it looks very disappointing.
Yeah, whenever a Yuumi lane controls the wave, in other words, they're pushing that wave and they're forcing it underneath the tower, you can't do anything against it. You're going to get hit repeatedly with that Q from Yuumi. You're going to get poked down. You're going to be too low to ever force and engage. Whereas on the other hand, if you're getting pushed in with Yuumi, oh boy, that's trouble.
It definitely can be. Just so you guys know, there was an issue with runes. We'll be remaking Champion Select with the same picks. We'll be onto the Rift in just a couple of minutes. Shouldn't be too much of a delay, thankfully. But so we talked about the 2v2 bot. We said, you know, the Yuumi can get that push in. But let's talk about jungle mid, because that was where...
I really like talking about the 2v2 bot. I'm a bot laner.
We'll get back there. I'm a support main. When we get into game, we can focus on that for ages, Frosk. Humor me. Give me this favor. We said Inspired and Larssen would be that 2v2 to watch. The rookies coming up big for Rogue. Does this duo allow them to get Rogue ahead in this game?
I mean, the early 2v2, I feel like Skarner is still really reliant on post level 6. Yeah, he can like wiggle out of the jungle and just try to like wiggle on people. Corki does a lot of DPS, but I feel like this is mostly a war of attrition in that mid lane of Corki landing his poke, chipping away at Azir, and Azir not necessarily playing the lane, also chipping away.
I agree. I think mid lane is pretty boring until level 6s come around. That being said, you know, you bring up the Skarner pick. You say pre-6, it is a little bit of a struggle. I think you can mend that by, you know, taking the Predator boots and then going to a lane with CC. So Corki in the mid lane isn't going to set you up. But Nautilus, oh boy, that's a whole lot of CC on every single ability.
It definitely is. You have 4 forms of CC in that kit. Is incredibly impactful for you. Just want to say it's not on the W.
Yeah, it's not on the W. There. But he's so tanky that he's able to get out more CC.
Tester, you think you'd know that?
the combo is the Q from Nautilus into the auto attack, into the W for the auto reset, into another auto attack to maximize.
And you also press E in there somewhere.
And just spam the E.
Get
and
the
just maximize your damage trade.
So we'll have to see how well Norskeren and Kobbe can play safe in that lane if that Nautilus is looking for the engage. Ezreal, of course, very easy. You know, you can buffer out the arcane shift, jump away, but if the Yuumi is ever caught, you're in for a world of hurt.
Yeah, and it's also the fact that Sivir is able to output a lot of damage very quickly because she also has an auto reset. So normally we say, yeah, Yuumi can get caught because there's not enough CC to keep her down long enough for her to get burst out that she'll just reattach to Ezreal and walk away. But I actually think with Sivir Nautilus, there is that upfront burst damage available that if the CC does land, she'll be immediately deleted.
Also, let's remember that on patch 9.12, there was a change to Yuumi, which means any form of immobilizing CC will interrupt it. Before it had to be a knock-up or a displacement of sort, that would knock it out, but now even Nautilus's auto attack, that route will stop her while she's in transit towards her ADC.
Right on the money, Ender. Now guys, if you're just joining us, we do have a delay ahead of Rogue and Splyce due to initial with runes. Picks and bans are already done. We'll be hitting the Rift shortly. For now, we'll keep discussing exactly how we feel these games are going to go.
So I've played a lot of Sivir Nautilus against Ezreal Yuumi. Some of the fun things to look out for is how Nautilus will try to stand and block the Yuumi Qs that comes in and tries to tag his ADC, and he can do it really successful because he also has an inbuilt shield, so he feels really good to actually take those extra poke damage.
Yeah, when Nautilus's shield is up, he can block it, and then while it's down, Spell Shield comes through from Sivir, and then his shield is back up, so you just constantly can cycle through those abilities to get out of that poke.
Of course, the shield from Yuumi's passive was nerfed a little bit on this patch as well, makes it a lot easier to get
block.
The bop and block.
That's such a good name.
Sure.
It's very accurate.
It is. It's very accurate. You and Me is very accurate as well. Final chapter, not so accurate, but thematically pretty good.
The last ult of the game, though, in theory, would be her final chapter.
It would be. It would be indeed. So I want to just set the stakes for this game for these two teams as we are back into pick and ban, so we'll be running through that just very quickly and we'll get on into the game. Let's set the stakes. Let's have a talk about what this game actually means for these teams, because I think from Splyce's side, losing today would be pretty disappointing. They haven't looked incredibly good so far this split, but a lot of people are still putting them as that 4th best team.
Yeah, right now you have to say they're the 4th best, but think about it this way. The first 3 weeks of the season are split up by Rift Rivals. So you have 1 week off for that, and then we have a break week afterwards. So these first 3 weeks are all about cementing yourself and trying to put your best foot forward and prove where you belong. After these 2 games today, or these 2 games this weekend rather, that's all over. So Splyce want to win these next 2 to solidify themselves as 4.
I mean, obviously everyone wants chance to win. That said, Splyce last week said that they had some issues with internet outage, so they didn't have necessarily the strongest practice. They said that into interviews. And like, I totally understand, it's right before Rift Rivals, you always want to pick up your wins, but over in the LPL, right before Chinese New Year, where there is an extended break, a lot of teams will kind of coast into it, knowing that the real muscle power happens during the break, where you get that extra scrim time, and then on the other side when the games start to mean more as the split goes on longer. So not that Splyce are going to coast here, but I think it is a bit more forgivable if they're not in tip-top form, knowing that their practice was interrupted last week, and we are about to go into a long-form break.
It definitely are. You do have that little bit of time to reset, to reevaluate. Rogue will be looking so far at this split and saying they're pretty happy. 2 wins out of 4 games. They've only beaten the bottom teams in Vitality and Excel, but so have Splyce. And if Rogue take a win today, that team is looking a lot more promising coming into that mid-split break.
I think it's about shift in discussion. You know, no one really knows what to expect from Rogue, how far they can climb. They've already done better than they did in spring, so is playoffs the goal? Where do we actually set expectations and goalposts for this roster?
That is definitely the question for this lineup. We are just through pick and ban, locking in those final champions right now, so we'll be on to the Rift in just a second, guys. Thank you so much for bearing with us during the brief delay that we had, and we'll be back on into the action in a moment. Where are we looking first, guys? You said mid lane's going to be a Farm Fest to level 6. Where is the action going to happen? Where am I going to get to shout about?
I think if we're looking at, you know, early game ganks or anything, we look at both these junglers, Xerxe definitely has a lot more room to make plays in the early game to try and control the scuttle shrines. If you were to find a gank, I would expect it to be maybe up top side. If this Aatrox can get a push going, then maybe, you know, with the consistent slows of Gnar, you can find a play. But otherwise, I feel like he's just going to be setting up control for his lanes, maybe give some pressure for his side lanes to be able to push forward. That's going to be his play.
Let's get on to Summoner's Rift. Look at how beautiful it is. It's Summoner's Rift. We've waited long enough for it. And now we see the green meadows, the vibrant bushes, the flowers, the river, ebbing, flowing, ready.
The golden pigeon.
The golden pigeon. Sure, Frost.
That's what it's called in China.
Is it actually?
Yeah, the golden pigeon.
Okay, one of these days we're going to do a cast where we just use the Chinese names for things.
I can do it right now.
Do you know what Yuumi is called?
Book cat?
See, on the playtesting, we just called her Cat Book. That was her name for so long in development.
Salmao?
I think Book Cat is better, personally.
True. I guess if you rate the importance of her book over the cat, then that's fair.
Don't worry, guys. I'll bail us out. So we've placed some early vision, especially in that river, and we seem to be cheating towards the top side. It looks like we're trying to secure, Splyce are trying to secure a good start for Xerxe to hide where he's starting. So you can see the early red Raptor ward that's been placed by Splyce. It's been pinged out there to make sure that they can track if someone moves in to place a ward on his red.
Yeah, Inspired also placed a blue ward on his own blue buff, expecting maybe Xerxe to go straight from red into the enemy blue, perhaps. So looking at Expired perhaps to go for a bit slower of a clear down towards his Krugs, get that early level 3, and wait for a gank until he can get a recall off, get those Predator boots, and find something.
Kobbe Norskeren, maybe a little bit aware that an early Skarner gank could happen down towards the bottom side, have placed a ward in that tri-bush as well. We'll keep our eyes on the Catboy bottom lane, I guess, with the Ezreal and the Yuumi as they just get pushed in a little bit by Woolite and Vander early on.
Yeah, W start as opposed to the Q start for Woolite on the Sivir, so wants full wave control. It gives you nice little trade access with the auto reset as opposed to just trying to tag the boomerang on both sides.
And Vander, you can see there, we talked about him being able to use the Titan's Wrath, the W, to shield up against any damage that comes out from Kobbe and Norskeren. That's exactly what he did. Prowling Projectile will hit, and it's Arcane Comet from Norskeren.
Yeah, and early on, that Prowling Projectile is an 11-second cooldown for Yuumi, whereas Vander's shield is a 12-second cooldown. So unless that Q is coming out immediately and also landing immediately, it is super reliable for Vander to be able to block it.
Interesting pathing here from Xerxe. I like the ward set into the Strybrush to know for certain that there was no vision from Rogue set in here. So he knows he slipped in undetected.
Slipped in behind enemy lines right now as Vander and Woolite have no knowledge of where Xerxe is. We said he's the one that set Splyce up for success in the early game when he's looking to do it, waiting for that EQ to come back up, and here he goes, stepping forward. Kobbe and Norskeren on the chase. Prowling Projectile, E in as well. Woolite exhausted, flashes away. The knockup's only going to land on Vander, and they will just take the summoner spells.
Yeah, he got what he came for, which was getting that flash. Expect to see Xerxe revisit this and see if he can punish Woolite on this Sivir.
And he's not too sad about delaying that gank for so long too, because now that he's in that bottom side river, it sets up for him to take this crab. You also saw that Vizicsacsi roam down towards that river to place a ward himself, so they will be able to get knowledge of Inspired once he steps out of his jungle for that crab.
Inspired here, as you say, spotted out, going towards the crab, and across the board, pretty even in these lanes, but we are only 3 minutes in. Maybe I'm anticipating a lead a little bit too soon. Xerxe here will stay down towards the bottom side, knowing that Woolite doesn't have his flash, means that he can protect his bottom lane.
And since Inspire did look for a slow clear, there's unfortunately nothing for Xerxe to really grab after getting that Summoner flash. You know, using the Squire's Bloom there, if the Krugs had been up, he would have walked there and kind of traded that Krug camp, but because he expended so much time and because Inspire did such a slow clear, Xerxe actually does lose a little bit of time in his jungle efficiency by having to walk all the way back to his wolf camp.
Which means a faster level 6 for Inspired. He's going to be able to recall now, pick up his Predator boots, maybe look for a play down towards that bottom side, which is also pushing up. But it is interesting, you know, that gank towards bottom lane, even though there wasn't a kill, the flash was blown, and now that push is allowed to happen. So you have Kobbe and Norskeren being able to poke underneath the tower to step forward, and in the event that Woolite wants to push to disrupt this Yuumi, you're going to be vulnerable without a flash.
Yeah, that's the thing. They want Woolite to push forward because they want Xerxe to have another access at ganking him, because right now the only lane capable for him is that top lane. So you could see Xerxe start to path towards his Krug. If he sees that top lane's push forward, maybe he ganks it, otherwise he'll continue to Raptors.
Vander trying to trade in there with the dredge line, did manage to connect, but really not able to do too much damage. And spell shield blown from Woolite means that Norskeren can just step up and actually use some of these Yuumi auto attacks to get some harassing.
Yeah, I really don't like Vander's decision there to go for the trade on towards Norskeren. He's effectively just wasting a lot of mana onto a health bar that doesn't really exist, because Norskeren can just immediately attach. Any sort of poke onto this Yuumi is really pointless.
Okay, so this is a creative back timer, or back location. The cool thing about when you face Nautilus is that because he has to attach to structures or terrain, if you really want to mess up a Nautilus or you're scared that he can potentially dive you as an ADC sitting under your tower, just literally stand behind the tower. It means that he can't connect his Q with you and disrupt your back and potentially look for a dive on the CC.
And we see one of the benefits of Yuumi as well, being able to attach to Kobbe means they get a double teleport back into the lane. You never have to wait for Norskeren to run back into the lane after having a back at the same time as the Ezreal. They're both there. They can push it back up if they want. They can reset.
And importantly, what this means is actually because the lane is sort of pushed towards Splyce's side, because you get two people to return to lane, Woolite can't match the teleport. He has to walk back through lane because he can't step forward without his support there. And that's actually a really big weakness that you have every single time you face against Yuumi.
I mean, as soon as we say it, he teleports back in, but they did know where the Jarvan was. They saw him clearing out a ward, which made it a lot safer for Woolite. He gets back here and expect just to see him pathing down towards the bottom side of this. Doesn't want to get anywhere near Xerxe. Now, looking at the rest of the map, we've looked a lot at bot lane, but level 6 is on its way for Inspired. Larssen and Humanoid have already hit it. Xerxe still only at that level 4, expecting to see those level 6s really start to have an impact on the map.
But it is starting to get a little bit frustrating for Xerxe if he wants to make a play. Right now, he's just kind of shadowing his lanes, keeping them safe while they do continue to have pressure there, you know, moving up between Humanoid as well as Kobbe and Norskeren. So I do want to credit Rogue, especially their bot lane, of keeping themselves safe and recognizing that they were playing Summoner down and they did have a target on them.
And Xerxe will use the bot side pressure that they have to take away the Cloud Dragon. Teleport burnt by Prophet on that Aatrox. First pick, remember, taking him back up towards the top side. Haven't really got any leads in any of the lanes. Nothing substantial, but kind of to be expected when we said both these teams want to scale towards those two items in team fights.
Level 6, however, has now been picked up for Inspired, so things should start to speed up a little bit here. This is what we were talking about. Xerxe, he was waffling around his lane, so he will be slower to Cataclysm, still level 5. So small window for Inspired to look for the play. He's heading straight towards his CC.
Yeah, and looking at the jungler's experience, it's not like a close level lead where Inspired just ticked over. Xerxe just hit level 5 himself, so it is a sizable difference at the moment. And all this deep vision for Splyce inside of their jungle is not going to spot out this path through the lane from Inspired.
Yeah, the setup there from the control ward. Here we go. This is the play for Rogue. Now, if they don't get this, and he walks away, it's actually really pivotal because then it allows Xerxe to find the time to get to level 6, and then suddenly the ball is back into Splyce's court where they can start playing aggressive.
Now look at this, Inspired now seen on his red buff. Before that, Splyce, their bot lane was backing away. They were considering recalling, but instead they saw Inspired. They can now fully push this minion wave, get it to bounce, and have their safety return. That was a big window of opportunity that Rogue was trying to go for, but because of smart play from Splyce, they missed it.
And the stalemate continues in the early game. It feels like both teams have just sort of dug out their trenches and are very happy sitting on their side of the map for the moment. No one really doing too much, no one really being able to find that impact. But all it takes is one explosive play. All it takes is one bit of lack of vision somewhere for one of these junglers to be able to find an avenue into a lane.
I do like the fact that you bring up lack of vision, because I feel like it was lack of information that really halted Rogue having their window to make a play. You know, it was the fact that Inspired didn't know if Xerxe was actually in that bottom brush behind them, so he didn't want to try to force something when you're competing with heal and exhaust up from Yuumi, as well as the potential of a Xerxe level 6 sitting down bottom.
And Chachi having his teleport up where Prophet does not have his own means that Chachi could join a fight if it erupted down towards that bottom lane. Larssen given across his blue buff, and we'll just get back into this lane, clear it out. We talked a little bit about how Corki's a good matchup into Azir in pick and ban. Here, it seems to be pretty even in the early game.
Yeah, I mean, early on, you expect to get pushed in just a little bit here on this Corki pick. You really just wait for items. It's literally just a math matchup, I feel like, where you eventually hit this point with Trinity Force plus double crit itemization, where you do more DPS in these auto-to-auto trades, and you can also outrange with things like the rapid fire cannon.
And I feel like it's kind of the difference of how you're getting priority over your lane, similar to how Ezreal and Sivir compete. It's like Azir has the push, is that how he's going to get his priority, whereas Corki wants the trade priority.
Definitely does. And we do have to focus a little bit on Larssen in that mid lane. We talked about how he's one of the rookies standing out for this team across the last couple of weeks of the LEC. He's had a pretty strong performance, kind of rose through the Challenger Series for a long time, was expected to be that next great EU mid, and now we're finally seeing him on the LEC stage.
And it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly what makes Larssen very good. His CS is super strong. He seems to play the side lanes well. I think it's how he respects side lane pressure, or just pressure in general. He seems to have a lot of map awareness that you don't usually see of someone as a newcomer to the LEC. He's a very smart, stable laner, is how I would explain him.
And speaking of that map presence, right, he has the package, he pushes out mid lane, he starts roaming down towards this bottom side, ends up seeing himself on a control ward, so he clears that and backs away. But I actually think the biggest MVP of this game has been Splyce's vision control. They just know exactly every single play that's going on. If we look at the bottom lane right now, there's actually a very clever ward on the red side near the tri-brush, right? And that saw Inspired looking for this lane gank that stopped him in his tracks. There were also the earlier wards inside of his jungle to spot out where he was at all times.
And it's also in response to the fact that Kobbe and Norskeren are probably never going to win the push trade against Sivir, so they're never going to be into an opportunity to contest that tri-brush control ward. So this is one of the old school wards back when we used to have sight stones and spam everything, that you would place that ward on the very tip because it wouldn't be spotted by the control ward in that brush.
It's a really good position to have. I remember those good old days. Heart of Stone, Heart of Gold, Philo Stone, that was all I built.
What?
And then 15. Oh, you're so young.
I started in Season 3, bro.
So young. Deary me. You remember those days, right, Frosk?
I like Rift Herald.
So do I, and Spy is taking it at the moment. Xerxe here will spot it out, but don't really think he can contest. He's on his way across. Inspired will pick it up. Meanwhile, in the top lane, teleport coming in as Chachi uses the Gnar to knock Prophet back. Prophet can use the World Ender, though. The Prowling Projectile chases on the final chapter. Will not spell demise for the Aatrox. Prophet gets away, and that's a teleport burnt by Kobbe.
That was a bad chapter. That was the end of Game of Thrones chapter.
It was Norskeren's first chapter, though, so hopefully it'll get better.
Oh.
But the play itself I did like. I like a good look in that the dragon is spawning. It's going to be a cloud dragon next, so there's more opportunity to play over the top side of the map because there's more opportunity up there. So they make the TP and they swap. We're now in Australian lanes.
Yeah, you would know all about that, Frost. The unfortunate thing for them, of course, is that the Rift Herald was just taken by Inspired. So usually when you make this play, it's try and get some cheap plates up top lane, you know, as you push in that 2v1, and then use your jungler to pick up the Herald. Now, because they went for this trade without the Herald, and because it was already taken by Inspired, Rogue get the tempo advantage, even though Splyce had the free double TP with Yuumi.
Yeah, see, Rogue could pick up a lot of gold out of this Rift Herald.
And again, so important that most of that gold is being funneled into Woolite's hands, where he's the primary beneficiary.
This is not good for Prophet. He doesn't have
Why
the World Ender.
there?
He does have the flash if he tries to get away. Here's the TP coming in. Kobbe not going to tank up the tower. Xerxe takes the shots, but good escape from Prophet. Why are you there? Well, because he can repel the advance from Splyce.
Because he had two people TPing in behind him.
Rogue just got everything. They got bot lane turret with the Herald. They had the Herald before that. Now they get a Cloud Drake on top of that, and they TP up two members to try and thwart this push coming in from Splyce. It's just very smart all around from them, and now they have a gold lead.
And they also have the Trinity Force completed on Corki, all of that gold into Woolite's pocket, kind of back to the point that I was starting with. Again, it feels so good on Sivir if you can springboard her ahead of the clock. I expect this to be the Essence Reaver Infinity Edge build, which is so potent and powerful on a single W bounce.
And she's 800 gold ahead now over Kobbe. Woolite in a very strong spot, wasn't penned back in the lane by the Ezreal, by the Yuumi, and they've been able to get through towards this mid game very effectively.
Yeah, I think what happened was that Woolite was able to pick up those solo turret plates in the bottom lane. Inspired drops the Herald and then can back away towards the Dragon. So very good look now for Woolite, who we have seen struggle a bit early on in the split. And up against Kobbe, I feel like he needs that extra presence in the early game to match him toe-to-toe as we move forward.
He does. Rogue opened up the map with that bot lane tower. Take Profit has teleport and flash. He's down towards the bottom side. A TP coming out from Humanoid as well. I expect it just to be another war of attrition here. You know, Sivir, Nautilus trying to push in. Both the junglers focused on the top side of the map because bot lane isn't really that exciting.
They do need to be a bit careful here. Splyce should have heads up that Corki is receiving his blue, so they should know there's at least 2 members from Rogue down within their jungle.
Again, that vision that we talk about, though.
Spotted out by the vision. They're not playing, they are playing with Chachi's TP. Hold it, though.
Oh, Profit came up through the river. No vision down towards the bottom side. Wasn't able to connect on Humanoid, who just shuffled away. Meanwhile, in the top lane, the final chapter has been used. A Crown of Projectile comes out as well, and First Blood goes across towards Kobbe. Xerxe goes golden, Inspire's going to drag him back. Profit's here, the World Ender pops, and that is 1 down. Rogue answer Profit on the chase as he looks to go forward.
Yeah, Larssen is also on the rotation up here, so the rest of Splyce will be forced to back away. They got the First Blood, but go even in the end.
Yeah, and meanwhile, it is Humanoid who's picking up some free farm and some solo time with this Azir into the mid lane. So while it is a 1-kill pickup there in Kobbe's pocket, I feel like it's still a very neutral map.
Definitely is, but Profit will be happy to have joined in that fight, gets himself an assist, keeps himself even with Chachi, who's now finished his Black Cleaver. And let's have another look at what happened in this top lane.
So it starts off here with Vander sitting in the bush, and I believe he gets a pick on towards Kobbe, who steps forward knowing he has Xerxe, but both junglers are here. Unfortunately, Woolite gets taken down very low inside of this Cataclysm. Again, without using the flash, you take so much damage. We talked about this earlier. She doesn't end up using that flash, so trades when there were multiple opportunities to try and flash and escape there.
Could definitely have got away from that true shot barrage.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely could have avoided it. But we talked a little bit about how Woolite has been struggling early on in this split. Maybe another sign indicative of that there, as he just wasn't able to escape in time. Across the rest of the board, do you want to talk about some of these items? Humanoid's gone Nash's Tooth first on the Azir. You've got Iceborne and Manamune stacking up for Kobbe. And as we said, the Essence Reaver into Infinity Edge going on for Woolite.
And it's just about making sure that you can get that initial W bounce. You have the extra AD by having the Infinity Edge and the Essence Reaver, and it's not about relying on multiple attacks by having the attack speed, but making the most out of stacking AD.
Both these junglers still want to put priority on this top lane, where the duo is at the moment. Kobbe is missing his flash, but still, of course, has the arcane shift to try and escape from things. And you keep seeing Larssen. We talk about how he tries to play the map. Push mid, start rotating up. Now that he has the Trinity Force, it seems like he can pretty easily walk up to the wave, drop a Q and an E on it, clear that one away, and have, 5 to 10 seconds while Humanoid's trying to clear the wave where he can make this rotation.
Ultimately, though, both teams are pretty fine to kind of sit in this type of position where we're just poking back and forth. Yes, they're both looking for plays if available, but again, you have the scaling option, and it feels like Kobbe is still waiting for his stacks to come through for his items.
Yeah, the biggest difference when we look at this map in terms of who can make a play and when, I think is between these two top laners when they're pushing bot lane. Right now, they're just sort of bashing heads and clearing the waves and then backing away. If one of them can build up a wave to get the time that they can move mid and then have their mid laner move up, you create this cascading effect where you bring 4 to 5 members toward the top lane very quickly.
My only concern is that without TPs, it feels like we're not going to have a lot of cross-map pressure, and it's more so on the junglers, Xerxe and Inspired.
Inspired doesn't have flash. He's used the Predator recently as well. I want to just come back as well to our vision game, the discussion that we were having early on. Look at where Splyce's vision line has moved to. It's now back defensively in their own jungle. It's back behind their own lines, whereas before it was pushing forward into the rogue jungle. It's a lot harder to spot Inspired out because he's now in control of this river.
And it's all about the priority that his side lanes are giving him. It's the fact that Larssen keeps getting time to cheat forward because he is so strong on this Corki right now with his items. And it's the fact that Ezreal, even with Iceborne Gauntlet, which is going to help his wave clear a little bit, can't compete with Sivir at this point, who can just auto-clear a wave.
We also saw that a lot of this vision came off of very proactive plays from Splyce, whether it was the level 2 gank in the bot lane from Xerxe to get the priority to be able to walk into the enemy jungle and ward, or the double teleport up topside, Kobbe and Norskeren coming in, that allowed them to again invade that jungle and put down smart vision. Now that we've reached, the 17, 18 minute mark in this game, it feels like there's less opportunities for these teams to make those moves unless there's an objective in their eyes.
Yeah, and there's not a big objective that they really want to take right now. Yeah, it's a cloud, and if you can get it for free, feels good.
Super speedy Scorpion, though.
Otherwise, you're really looking for picks. Someone caught out.
Final chapter coming in. Inspired's going to go golden for the moment. Vander on the flank. Larssen there as well. The suppression comes out.
That's a big
Xerxe into the team, but he's going to gnar them aside. Prophet coming in from the side as well. And the flank is on. Prophet is going to end some worlds here. Takes out one. Can't take out anymore. And Splyce actually come out on top in the trade. Larssen trying to jump forward with the flash. Can't get in close enough.
Yeah, Larssen just wants one more auto attack. Xerxe waiting on the wings, considering trading backwards here. Even though they go down in kills, Rogue still have priority and get a couple of cheap shots on the tower.
And it feels so much easier to teamfight at this point in the game with the likes of Sivir and Corki versus Kobbe on this Ezreal. Yeah, he's connecting with the Qs where he needs to be, but it's not the same type of consistent damage coming out of these two.
I feel like you need very slow fights, not in the sense of, you know, we're fighting head-to-head for a very long time, but Ezreal needs repositioning, where he can land Qs, back away, and have a team fight that moves across the river, instead of just sitting in one place where Sivir can go bap, 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 and get those ricochets.
Which is why a champion like Azir works really well with the likes of Ezreal.
Exactly.
It offers you so much control into a team fight, but when everything really collapses as quickly as it did because Skarner's rushing forward, we're still so early in the game that you don't have QSS on everyone, he doesn't really get the time to position properly.
So now looking one more time at this fight, it is Splyce with 5 members in the area at the start. So they try to find the move, but of course there's a stopwatch on Inspired, and then the rest of Rogue's backline can auto very easily inside this tight corridor. It's not very hard for them to be dove on, and Vander buys the space that even Xerxe, who jumps on towards Woolite still has the protection to try and get some auto attacks down.
Pretty sure Larssen was trying to go across the wall there, couldn't manage it. Prophet spotted out here by Xerxe and Humanoid underneath his own tower. And we'll just be forced away. Now, gold pretty much even between these two teams right now. 600, 700, the max deficit that Splyce find themselves in, but with Humanoid down towards this bottom side, going for the tower, should equalize that pretty soon. We are coming up towards the Baron, 20 minutes in. Both teams take it relatively quickly, especially with an Azir. You can shred through that objective.
For me, I think the bigger thing is actually the Infernal that's going to be spawning. Obviously, if something catastrophic happens, it's very easy to walk towards the Baron, but especially for Splyce's comp, they really want that Infernal. It makes Kobbe feel so much better on the likes of Ezreal.
Especially because itemization-wise, 2 items is where we give them that edge. It would feel very good. Speaking of 2 items, Woolite also has the Infinity Edge and the Essence Reaver too, so the Qs are going to be doing a lot of hurt. Of course, because Woolite has the auto attack reset built into his kit, he values the attack speed a little bit less, especially early on when it's more about quick trades as opposed to the longer fights.
And again, it just feels so good if Azir kind of sets the line of scrimmage where he pushes everyone back. A champion like Sivir doesn't need to rely on the attack speed because she can't actually range to hit anyone. She just wants the bounce back there, which is why the crit feels so much better from the Infinity Edge versus a second item Zeal.
See Rogue once again setting up towards this top side. Having taken that tower, they can just push in. Splyce are going to try and get river control, but really only get control of mid and their own jungle. Still, Rogue have entire vision control here. Prophet going in onto Church is going to pull him back. The Gnar into the wall, but Prophet can go for the chase. Here comes the package. Larssen on the offensive. Chachi running for the hills, retreating, puts up the white flag, but it's not going to save him for long. Larssen takes the kill.
Smart move there from Larssen, using that map pressure with the package to come on in and bait Chachi into that fight. It's a quick kill now for Rogue, and they're able to use that now to move into the mid lane and get some control around the Baron area.
Yeah, it's what do they actually get off of that pick outside of just trying to punish Chachi, pick up some free extra gold, and unfortunately it doesn't feel like a lot. Yeah, they clear around the Baron, but there wasn't a lot of vision to begin with there, and they don't have that mid lane tower. This is kind of the big thorn in both team sides. As long as these mid towers hold, we're going to continue to see this stalled out, slower pace game where it's just a tug of war back and forth.
Exactly, because when the mid lane tower is there, you can step further forward in the lane, which means you're killing the minion wave faster, which means you're clearing the wave faster, which means you can then freely move into the river and contest around vision.
That is a lot of control wards.
So many.
That is
It's great to see. I love it when I see a lot of control wards on the map.
But there's about efficiency of vision control.
Nah, chuck them all down. They're only 70 goals.
No, so legitimately, I think this is intentional now from Splyce putting the deep vision where you say maybe it's a little bit overkill, but we saw Rogue actually move deep into their territory, so they're trying to protect against potential flank teleports from someone like an Aatrox.
The one ward.
Now Xerxe clears that. That's what we call a little back sweeping right there to make sure that they can't get flanked really easily.
It's pretty good reconnaissance. Now we'll see this once again. Chachi on a control ward. They've been hurt by vision before, Frosk. They weren't going to let it happen again.
And he just didn't respect the fact that Larssen could be there in a snap second.
Whoa.
Ooh.
That looks cool.
Yeah, it did. I enjoyed that. Thank you, observers. That was pretty sweet. Yeah, and the chase down is the chase down, right? There's no real surprises there. When you're Gnar in that situation, you're not going to get away from it. Now, you can see Rogue have moved the battlefield up to the top side of the map. Splyce are trying to be here to answer. I want to come back to some of the players we said we wanted to see a lot from coming into this game. We talked about Inspired and Larssen and Humanoid and Xerxe. Those were the guys that would set these teams up. How do we feel they've done so far?
Well, look, I've been pretty critical of Humanoid recently because I feel like he has not had huge impacts in these games for his team. I think, you know, lowest in terms of damage per minute, damage per minute difference against his enemy mid laner, damage share, all these things he rates very lowly on, and he's usually playing these split push style champions. Now in a game where he's on a pick like this Azir, he has to output so much damage in these team fights for Splyce to feel good about themselves.
Chachi's going to get caught out.
Whoa!
Pulled back with the Impale, they're looking for the blast cone as well. Vander's going to knock him up, and Chachi doesn't really have anywhere to go. CC'd for days, tries to get away, has the flash, rooted over the wall, but Prophet can flash for the chase, and Chachi will not escape.
Oh man, what a terrible series of events there for Chachi. He gets ulted out of his hop, he gets CC'd somehow out of the blast cone away. It's just a brutal time to be alive for Chachi.
But I actually think Splyce are completely fine with this. Yeah, Chachi keeps dying. That doesn't feel great, but it's not transitioning into any sort of objective. In fact, it's Humanoid that actually takes the tower onto the top side of the map. And again, the more items in that Azir pocket, the more that this is on a timer. That's what their comp wants. They need Humanoid to be strong before Splyce feel confident heading into fights.
Yeah, at the same time, I feel like Rogue, they made that play down bottom lane. They've also continued to send multiple members up top side as well. So they're much more focused on getting the side lanes pushed out, which makes it very hard to control anything around the mid lane and set up for objectives.
This is kind of the long-term bleed over from picking out Chachi. It's the fact that Splyce sent the resources up top side, which means that they give Rogue first access to the Infernal. So I guess in the end, I feel a little bit better about that.
It pays off in the end, but you are losing visual control on the top, and you're still only 600 gold ahead as Rogue, right? You're not getting these magnificent advantages.
But you are getting Larssen everything that he needs. It's like, where does the gold actually funnel? Yeah, it's not a huge difference between the teams, but it feels very good in Larssen's pocket right now on the Corki, who's sitting on 2.5 items and now has an Infernal in his back pocket. For the same reason that it empowers someone like Ezreal, it's just as empowering on someone like Corki.
That being said, Larssen is sitting at around 700 gold less than Humanoid at the moment.
It's not about against Humanoid, it's about the team.
Definitely overall in gold, but I was looking at it too because that difference is made up in the top lane for Prophet, a little bit in the jungle too for Inspired, where they have been putting more resources. Remember, Xerxe took a very slow approach to clearing his jungle while Inspired really tried to get through that. So at the moment, the difference is in the top lane split push for Rogue and the mid lane damage dealt over time for Humanoid.
And we're starting to see Rogue almost 1-3-1 at points here. Aatrox in the top, 3 players in the mid, and Corki down towards the bottom side, just pushing out those waves. Eventually, you feel they'll come up and all fight around this Baron. It might even happen now.
Well, it's also that Inspired has Flash, and no one has a QSS. He's just looking for his Flash.
Here we go. Xerxe's the one that's going to go for the engage. The final chapter used as well as the fight erupts in the river. Xerxe falls back, Chachi off towards the top side. Prophet there with the world ender, but you need to get a kill first, because otherwise you're going to fall. The Mystic Shot not quite able to connect, but the shutdown still comes out, and Splyce take the kill.
Splyce get everything right there. Chachi running into the jungle as well. This could be it. They could finally take the mid lane turret. They could just go to the Baron.
Is that what they're going to do? They clear out the vision on it. They started up. Prowling projectile used as well, but Inspired still has the flash.
I think it's really important that Humanoid still has his ultimate, which means they can approach this Baron and shove away any contest. Now, Inspired still has flash, like you pointed out, so he can get to the pit, but they turn.
Xerxe's so low. Vander is going to get caught out. He will fall, but the reinforcements have arrived as Larssen teleported into the fight. Look at the damage you can get onto Xerxe. He's down to basically no HP. He has to use the smite on the Scuttle Crab, and this means that Rogue get mid lane prior.
Vander going in to die was enough stall now for Rogue to force them off the Baron, and look at this. Mid lane turret is exposed. Splyce went for too much, and they got punished for it.
Yeah, and that's the question now in the long term. Is this where Splyce look back at the VOD and say, we made the wrong macro decision by walking to the Baron and having confidence that Azir could create enough space for us instead of pushing down mid?
Well, looking at this fight one more time, Splyce find this opening because they saw where Larssen was. He was zoned away. Now behind this wall, he can't get any auto attacks down, so it's very easy for Humanoid and Kobbe just pump out the DPS because they're not threatened by any frontliners diving onto them. They're forced away, and also the backline from Rogue is doing nothing.
Round 2.
Yeah, you can see Vander gets caught out a little bit, but Xerxe's taking so much damage, actually steps back into range of the Baron, meaning that if Larssen hit one more missile barrage, if he hit one more shot from that artillery, he would have been able to take out the enemy jungler.
Here we go. Prophet now trying to get the fight.
Kobbe getting chased down, the flash away. Final chapter used as well as Humanoid is down from the bottom side of this fight, but they get the flash out of Kobbe. That is a big summoner spell to be burned, and you can see Rogue say, well, we can go towards the Baron straight away.
Yeah, I wonder how much they want now, because Chachi's pushing down in that bottom lane. Prophet would have to reset and pick that one up, or they could just get the vision down and back up.
What is different in the style of these compositions is that it's so much easier if Splyce are on Baron for them to immediately pull off of the Baron and look for the team fight. They have things like the Azir sweep and scoop. They have the mobility of Yuumi and Ezreal, and even the Jarvan. Whereas once Rogue's composition is locked onto the Baron, they don't have the same mobility to immediately turn towards a fight. So if they ever cheat towards Baron, it's literally just to place and clear vision. Whereas Splyce can continuously keep poking away at this and starting Baron.
And this gets a little worrisome now for Rogue, because they went to focus vision down on towards the Baron. Prophet had to reset too, so they end up losing that mid lane outer turret, which was their safety net when playing around, getting priority in the mid lane and setting up their own vision in the river.
So much healing coming out from Kobbe there as Norskeren uses the zoomies to heal him up. He also has building up towards that Bilgewater Cutlass. Expect that to be a Hex-Tech Gunblade, most likely, considering he's already got the Ludens for that bit of AP on the Ezreal. Splyce still controlling the battle up towards this top side. Another skirmish likely to erupt soon.
Yeah, Kobbe packs a punch right now. 40% CDR on the Ezreal Sork shoes as well. They're starting this up. It's down to AK. The teleport comes in.
And that's all that Splyce wanted. They just get the teleport out. They burn some of those resources from the enemy, and they can go back and restock and resupply.
There is going to be a bit of a longer reset, however, on Splyce getting back into formation for that exact same play again. They need to reset their side lane, as well as get priority back over the mid lane, which Rogue are taking that window to say, okay, get the Scuttle Crab, put down all of the wards. Again, our composition can't start and turn off of Baron as safely, so they just have to put down the defensive maneuver and back away.
It is interesting, though, because now that we've reached this point, nearing 30 minutes into the game, these teams can just sort of group up as 5 and continue to contest vision and fight over this Baron area, because now after the preseason patch to make it so the cannon minions spawned after every single wave after 25 minutes, those waves are effectively locked in the side lanes. They don't actually push that much against each other unless there is a player there.
So big thing that just happened for Rogue is that Larssen finished his Infinity Edge. 3 completed items now on the Corki. Expect Humanoid to be going towards the Rabadons as well, but he's not quite there yet. We have a power trough for Splyce and a power spike for Rogue.
But the thing is can Larssen actually output the damage? Because so far he's been zoned out a lot of these fights.
See, here's the things. Larssen and Woolite could just stay to the side of this. The Scryer's Bloom, long-range fast-set alteration, so I use that into the pit, but they're still doing this Baron. Xerxe's going to have to jump in blind, 6,000 HP on it. Here comes Humanoid from the side. He's going to bring some reinforcements to the fight. True Shot Barrage comes out, but now the Baron's angering Xerxe. And Rogue trying to disengage, trying to keep Splyce separated. Flash, Impale, straight in, Xerxe gone! And maybe with that Splyce, there's chances in this game, but they're going to reset. They're pushing forward. Inspired so low. Look at Chachi, jumped on by Norskeren. Kobbe forcing Vander to the bottom side, but it's all on Larssen.
Rogue have no more tools left to turn and fight, so the poke keeps coming out from Kobbe. They don't have a jungler, so they cannot start the Baron, but they should be able to get major control after that fight.
I mean, that's it. That's still an oopsie by both teams right there. Rogue for kind of waffling. Are they going to start the Baron? Are they going to commit to it? And for Xerxe to go into this pit. Baron did so much damage to Splyce's front line that they couldn't then immediately turn onto the Baron once they had won the fight.
No, they couldn't. You can see Xerxe jumped on there, and this is where Splyce can just kite back and re-engage at their own leisure.
Yeah, without the ultimate, though, from Vander, without the ultimate from the Skarner as well, there is no turn, and Chachi had just turned over in towards that Mega Gnar, so the team fight was going to look very, very good for Splyce if Rogue had planted their feet and tried to fight back.
Once again, the vision game starts once more. There's the Hex-Tech Gunblade complete on Kobbe. Rabadon's death cap on Humanoid as well. We said coming into this game he hasn't had the best of starts to this split, but he's looking strong in this game. He's had some good team fights. He's had some good Azir walls to try and reset these fights. Yeah,
as long as he's pumping out the DPS and keeping his backline safe with that ultimate, he is going to be doing what his team needs him to do in this game. I do want to dissect these team fights a little bit more, though, because we said
that's my job.
At this point, like, nice. At this point, actually, we're going to have to hold that because Xerxe's on the flank.
And Kobbe's here as well. Teleport coming in from Splyce. They know they want to go for this Baron straight afterwards. Prophet pops the world, and Kobbe coming in. There's Larssen as well. The final chapter won't connect. Prophet goes golden. Inspired gets onto the front line here as well, and Xerxe is gone. Prophet managing to survive, and Splyce pay for it with a life.
These fights are a mess. I'm going to do the critical analysis for you. These are just a mess from both teams. It's basically like shooting from the hip, playing moment to moment. I don't think I've seen a Yuumi ult really hit or clean up anyone. Norskeren is constantly on top of Kobbe instead of trying to work with his front line. Neither team are really getting in a good position here.
And what's ended up happening is the game is just completely stalling out. No one can take a Baron. They keep trying to jump in here with the last seconds of that Mega Gnar bar and end up giving over control to Rogue.
Rogue once again going back to the Baron. Inspired, caught out just a little bit. There's the true shot barrage. He's down to half HP and you can't do it. If you get chunked like that, if you get poked out, you cannot go back to the Baron. And that means Rogue have to reset. Splyce do have a gold lead now. It's about 2,000 or so, but it feels like it doesn't matter that much at this point in the game.
Is this going to be the situation where we walk back towards the Baron, or are we actually going to look at the free Ocean Drake that's just been sitting there like, guys, I've been here.
They might give us that without a team fight.
It's just water. Who wants water?
Well,
I mean, if it's like Coke or something, that'd be much more delicious.
Or Red Bull.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thanks.
Gives you wings.
Sponsored by Red Bull.
Okay, now Splyce set up the Sun Disc in the middle lane. Prophet trying to get behind Kobbe here, who has got that arcane shift still to jump across the wall. Prophet is on the flank, looking for the perfect avenue into the fight, doing some reconnaissance behind the team. Xerxe now stepping forward, almost has that Mega Gnar. Prophet pops the ult, Xerxe jumps in, the Cataclysm used, but then straight into the Impale. Prophet's already fallen, Xerxe gets out. Gnar's just about to come up and knocks back Inspired. The true shot barrage from Splyce, it's a double. The Humanoid and Splyce come out on top.
You guys are hyped for a TFT game. This is just ARAM all over again.
I feel like by sheer luck, we finally got a good team fight for Splyce right there. The Yuumi ultimate connected. They got pulled in by Jarvan and Gnar because Inspired keeps grabbing some of the tanks.
But it worked out well for them. Splyce get the team fight, Splyce get the Baron, and 34 minutes in, they have a 4,000 gold lead.
But Rogue get the Ocean Drake.
That is true. That is true. We're going to have a look at Humanoid's view in that game, in that fight, because he picked up 2 kills.
Okay, who did Inspired grabbed here?
It's Xerxe every time, I'm pretty sure. Yep. That's the tank front line, so Humanoid's in the back line, dishing out free DPS, moving all those soldiers. Really good job by Xerxe, too, to land the CCs onto 2 members to get those consecutive auto attacks down there by Humanoid.
But you can see how easy the team fights are once the line of scrimmage is set there from Splyce, that they got Xerxe in front of them, they have the Azir sand soldiers, the wall comes up, and it's just so easy for Kobbe at this point in the game to dish out so much damage, but it's just still been kind of an inconsistent mess for majority of these fights. We have, what, like 10 fights this game, and I think 2 of them have looked clean?
Yeah, I think a really big part of it, too, for Rogue side comes down to whether or not they can get the first kill of a fight. Because if they get that first kill, Prophet then revives with the World Ender. Without it, he drops almost immediately, and they don't have that damage over time from their front line.
And you can say, like, okay, that's Inspired's job, but who is he actually supposed to grab? It's really hard to catch Yuumi and Ezreal who don't have the QSS, and the other guy, Azir, does have a QSS. And so he's like, okay, I guess I grab the Mega Gnar. It seems like, no, please don't grab Mega Gnar, or I grab the Jarvan.
Yeah, really not many options for him in this game. Do you want to give some credit to Xerxe as well in pick and ban? We talked about how he needed to be the primary engage for this team. Sometimes he did that pretty well there. Him and Xerxe teaming up with the Cataclysm into Gnar combo to stop Rogue in their tracks. Now, Splyce pushing in for the inhibitor tower down towards this bottom side.
Yeah, with the Baron minions too, it's so easy to walk up and auto attack. Big damage coming out from Kobbe. That'll be the tower.
Xerxe doesn't have flash, but they're going to go in with the chase on the hunt. Popped Humanoid there down to half HP, but Vander's already done. And Rogue have to step back. That's the tower, that's the inhibitor. And that is Splyce with a strong foothold in this game.
And now we get a good look at how Splyce's composition is supposed to work for them. Because it is the likes of that AP-esque Ezreal, it's doing so much damage. I feel like it really was a zoning ultimate that just wiped across Rogue.
Have another look at that fight in the top lane. Feels like Vander just oversteps a little bit. As you say, Larssen takes half his health, and here, just Inspired once again, dragging
every single time he pulls in the Jarvan, but then Vander's in the front line. He realizes he's not actually all that tanky once the shield from his W goes down, so the front line from Rogue is really stopping their damage dealers from being able to fight back. You know, as soon as one of their frontliners drops, they just have to run.
I just think it's hilarious that Xerxe has the Warmogs and the Gargoyles. He gets pulled every single time. He's like, you can't kill me. I am invulnerable.
You think I'm locked in here with you? You're locked in here with me. And just dunks the Cataclysm on them as he comes out of the Skarner ultimate. 6,000 gold lead so for Splyce, and you have to think the next steps are closing out this game. Look towards the bottom side, take that next tower, look towards mid, take the tier 2, and Rogue will have to pull a rabbit out of the hat if they're able to get back in this matchup.
I really hope we get another like 5 to 7 minutes of this game right now, because both bot laners on Splyce's side are trying to complete their Rabadon's death caps at the moment. An Ezreal and a Yuumi third item is going to be going for that big stacks of AP.
And you can see Norskeren doesn't just have to sit on Kobbe anymore as well. He's on Xerxe, he's speeding up that front line, he's making Xerxe tankier, giving him the heals as well, and opening up the map as well for Splyce. This mid lane tower down to half, Prophet trying to push out top as the super minions push in, and it's very easy for Splyce to pull Rogue around the map.
Yeah, and Humanoid has that wave down bot side too, so that turret should be dropping now with that Baron buff. Larssen does have the package, so in theory can respond to a fight quicker, but Rogue, as we said before, have no good targets to catch out. This must be such a frustrating game for them, because for the last 10 minutes, they've not been able to do much of anything.
And the unfortunate reality is that while Larssen and Woolite are very strong also at this point in the game, in terms of their items, you cannot fight front to back, because your tank line will just get shredded, because you only have Inspired. He can't grab anyone he wants, otherwise it's just an Aatrox there, whereas you have Gargoyle, Stoneplate, Xerxe, and Chachi who are just sprinting at you.
Yeah, the problem is, theoretically, again, they could have a front line if they have an extra HP bar from their Aatrox, but because of the double stone plates from Chachi and Xerxe, they can't get that initial kill. You can't catch an Ezreal or an Azir either. That doesn't seem like a realistic possibility either here for Rogue, so it becomes very grim for them.
It means that Rogue need to get really creative with how they're executing these fights. If you ever see a situation where both teams are just deathballed running at each other, Splyce are going to win that every single time. You need some sort of flanking maneuver, someone caught out of position, in a realistic world of like Inspired can grab Kobbe and punish him.
That's the only option I see right now for them. In all honesty, like, Humanoid has the QSS. Any other target isn't going to net you much of anything. I guess you could grab Norskeren, but if you're ever catching a Yuumi in a late game fight, then that Yuumi's trolling.
Good look to catch out Vizicsacsi down here towards the bottom side. Maybe not anticipating all of Rogue waiting in the bush. Guerrilla warfare from them as they try and catch someone out, but Chachi just goes into the Mega Gnar. It's too far pushed up for any of Rogue to really chase this, and with Splyce getting mid lane prio and with the Elder Drake being up soon, you have to expect that's where the next fight will erupt.
Look at what Rogue are doing, though. They have a couple members sneaking into this bottom lane, trying to catch on the counterplay, but there's 5 members of Splyce here.
Yeah, Woolite has TP. He'll have to join the fight from mid lane if they want to go for it. Predator popped. Prophet trying to force them up towards the top side, but battle lines have been drawn and neither team is willing to step forward.
Yeah, because check out where Woolite is. He's just chilling in that mid lane trying to collect some farm, and now he's responsible for catching that wave. Does have TP.
Where's he going to TP to? There's a ward in the pit. Is that where you're coming in? There's one down towards this bottom side as well, but there's a control ward on that. There's the TP. We're going to see Woolite join the fight, and it's going to start now.
Inspired has to be able to find Kobbe. Instead, they get poked out and pushed back. The Elder Dragon is started up again, and it's taken down by Xerxe.
As he gets it into a great Gnar from Vizicsacsi. He pulls all of Rogue back into the team, and there's no escape. Kobbe's going to get Prophet up towards the top side. You can see down towards this bottom side of the fight. Chachi's just chasing them. You can't get through the tank. You can't do anything against Splyce, and it's an easy enough win in the fight.
Yeah, Humanoid, meanwhile, teleported on the back half of that fight, and he is just going to walk it in here for Splyce.
That should be it. It's Woolite and Larssen trying to stop a red buff from going down, and Woolite, he can't get back to base. Humanoid's just going to take it all.
Kings of the late game. Splyce once again show us once you hit the 40-minute mark, there's no defeating them. 40 minutes into the game, they'll take the win versus Rogue.
Some creative itemization that came out and how it was going to deal with Rogue's composition. There was just no good target for Inspired to grab hold of. They had a couple of picks, but Splyce just waited them out and rolled them over at 40 minutes.
Yeah, it was a slow game to be sure. Both teams struggled to start up the Baron and find a convincing fight early on in order to try and take that one down. But ultimately, we saw past 3 items here for Kobbe's Ezreal. Once he hit that 40% CDR, that he could just poke down and immediately burst the front line of Rogue and ultimately net his team the win.
What a game it was from Splyce. Guys, be sure to vote for your Kia player of the game at lolesports on Twitter. This time it's between Chachi, Humanoid, and Kobbe, all of whom had very good games, to be sure. I think like that last ultimate from Chachi, the frontlining from him, he's always going to be one of my favorites when he lands a 5-man ult.
Look, Kobbe probably did like 40k damage in that game. Maybe more. Maybe 50k.
He's playing Ezreal. You just stand back and do
he played it good. That's my analysis. He played it good.
He definitely did. Rogue on the other side, I think, will be not too dismayed, right? Like, you look at it, you held Splyce for a long time, your composition didn't really work out as well as you would have wanted it to in the late game, but still, going at 40 minutes against Splyce when last split you were at the bottom of the standings is some big improvement since split.
I think what Rogue will take away from this game is that ultimately I felt they got beaten in vision. Throughout the early game so much, you were wondering, when is Inspired going to make that ultimate play? But Splyce knew where he was at every single moment of that early early game. So they'll go back to realize, where were these wards that spotted him out? How can he path around them or clear them or stop them from being placed in the first place? And ultimately, that will be their takeaway, and that will be the area of improvement going forward.
I also think that we saw some good looks from Humanoid this time around. Right place, right time. He was managing his side waves. He was always in position for the team fights. There was never any egregious mispositions from him. He was creating space for Kobbe. I think this is exactly what you wanted out of the mid laner, and where we've had some criticisms of him in the past.
Exactly, because for this team to move forward and break out of that forever fourth place it seems they are in at the moment, they need improvements out of Humanoid. Norskeren too, I thought, played a good game on this cat. Once we got later on, although of course you're just putting down the ultimate, we'd love to see some more there too.
I can see some of these last team fights. This is the one where Inspire drags in Xerxe. Xerxe gets out and Humanoid just rips through Rogue.
Yeah, he basically says, we're winning the team fight, turns around and then just starts to destroy them in tandem with Chachi.
Using the range advantage of the Azir, making it very difficult to trade back.
So here's the thing, as soon as this TP comes down, Rogue can no longer disengage. They have to plant their feet and protect Woolite to get him into the fight, and they actually eat a lot of poke damage in doing that. Once the fight is then done, it stalls out enough time that the Elder Dragon is able to get burned down and picked up by Xerxe, and then immediately Splyce turn on them.
Yeah, I mean, just look how quickly Inspired and Vander evaporated in that fight. There's nothing, so now the bot lane's on the run. They can survive, but they can't very well put down the DPS.
They could not. Overall, I think if I'm a Rogue fan there, I'm saying that's pretty good. Splyce, I think there'll be some things you want to improve, especially since we said their comp is really strong at 2 items. They didn't really do a huge amount at 2 items. They scaled well into the late game, and they had a stronger team fight near the end, but I would have liked to see a little bit more from them.
Yeah, I mean, we could have seen, you know, some more proactive plays, perhaps playing around the side lanes where I felt like Vizicsacsi got punished quite a few times in a row, but ultimately I think they had a good read. You know, 30 minutes into that game, we were like, wait a second, our front line just can't die. We can probably take it a little bit slower in these.
I think another issue is that they lost mid lane priority. It felt like kind of in the mid game where it was Larssen that was constantly cheating upwards. So while they could have decided to play around Chachi more, give him some more resources in the 1v1 off into the other side of the map, it felt like Splyce were aware, hey, Larssen's continuously up here. We don't have immediate access to Azir, so we need to stall this out.
Well, we are actually going to hear from one of the Splyce frontline. It's Vizicsacsi who played 9 that last game. Law, take it away.
Thank you, Medic, and thank you, Chachi, for joining me. What a tense game for you, and an important one when you think about it, because you both had one against Excel and Vitality. So how did you approach the game today?
Yeah, well, basically, I think every match that you play in the regular split has to be your most important one, because it still gives 1 point, and the regular split counts so much. So we approached it with good scouting and the good plans coming into the game. And I think it went quite well, but we had like a slump in the middle of the game for like 5 minutes or so where I got caught as well, and yeah, we could have done better there.
Yeah, actually tell me about that, because that was not a very action-packed game, if we may say, and it took you a bit of time to actually set up the play. So tell me about the communication in the mid-game to unlock the advantage.
Yeah, well, it basically was a really tense game because it came down to 2 teamfight cons matching each other, and whoever makes a mistake can lose the game instantly. So we had to play very carefully about our range, because our team comp was better with the range and theirs was much better for engaging. So we had to play it carefully, and I think we couldn't really establish control, so that's why it took so long. I think them having up the mid-tier 1 tower helped them a lot to defend against the Nasher, and that should have been our primary objective to take.
Do you think they had an easier comp to play in the late game with the Sivir, the Corki?
Yeah, definitely. Their comp is easier because they just have to press Sivir ult and Nautilus ult, and Skarner can just flash in as well. But they kind of need to find man advantage situations, and also when they played through the side and tried to catch me, I think that was smart of them, and that's how they could have snowballed the game further.
Is this because of how tricky their composition was that you made a nice NA cosplay by dancing around the Baron for a good 10 minutes?
Yeah, we said let's group around Nash and just fight them to death.
Well, that was a good game for you guys.
Thank you.
Congratulations on this one. We'll see you tomorrow, and we're going to take a short break. And coming back, Schalke 04 will take on Origin. Take it away.
The suppression comes out.
That's amazing.